All right, I've tried several times to make this video, so I'm really just going to try to keep this short and sweet. Uh, things keep going wrong. This is a response to your challenge, as you put it, Professor Anton, about for the viewers to think of moral words that don't have a polar structure, such that one of the words is not, or is and examples of where words aren't defined necessarily in terms of what they are not. Um, like good and bad, up and down, right and wrong, things like that. So I think that I want to make a distinction between the qualitative moral words, which all of the examples that you gave are you know uh, instances of, I think, qualitative moral words, we might say, where they differ by degree, and that each of them has an antithetical, opposite, or pair. Um, but I think that we might say that there are other kinds of moral words, and that you could think of ontological moral words. Ontological moral words having a specific sense that qualifies them, and I think that you know uh, the dignity of the human being, preciousness, the nobility of the human spirit. I think those all qualify as moral words, as having to do with values or uh, the moral sphere, and then I think, almost necessarily don't have antithetical opposites that are on this polar continuum that of differences of degree. Um, there is a presence and absence there. I think that that's what but I don't think that presence and absence of these ontological, or you can say that there's no dignity, or the dignity is not there, or whatever you want to say it, however you want to put it, or the non-existence of it. But that's with anything you could do that. I mean, the point is, I think that what I want to say is that there's no antithetical opposite, or pair, or complementary pair word with for these moral words. So I'd like to get your impression on that, your take, the way you would approach that as a reply would be good. And then the other issue that I want to bring up real quick is that it seems to me, at least philosophically questionable as to whether we really need to be thinking about in any necessary or essential way, thinking about moral words, especially the ones qualitative moral words, because they have the antithetical pair words to go with it, to go with them. Um, do we really need to think of them as existing on this pole? Are these, is good really a necessary complement to bad? I mean, or if it is, are all of the words, uh, do all of the words necessarily have their pairs, and if so, or if not, well, which ones do and which ones don't, and if all of them do, then why? Um, because I say that because I think there's another way to think about these, and that's where you have different, the difference between good and bad, instead of being uh, a difference of degree, of infinitely many degrees, if you want to put it that way. uh, you could say that there is a difference in kind between good and bad, and that it really, the number, the number line visualization of it goes 0, which is neutral, and 1, which is good. And then on the other hand, for bad, there's 1, which is fully bad, and then 0, which is neutral, or the absence of badness, or something like that. So I mean, is it just the product of the categoriality of language, that these are just different ways of articulating and combining and separating these words, good and bad, and that's just a contingent aspect? You could just as well put neutral as the pair to both, or as the complement to both, and I don't think that you could say that neutral is the just the absence of goodness, or that neutral is the absence of badness, nor could you say that neutral is the opposite of either one, because it's involved in both. And third, finally, I think, which is just a addendum to the second thing about questioning the necessary polar structure of these words. Um, you know, the phenomena backing these words. If you say that, like, oh well, New York City as a whole. Um, this is one use for the word. For good, for, let's say, the pair generosity and selfishness as a moral pair. You could say that the city of New York City over the last year, the generosity has increased, but that doesn't necessarily entail that the selfishness has gone down. You could say that it's just there's just as much selfishness in New York City as there was a year ago, but still generosity has gone up and vice versa. So there's so these are all reasons, well, for questioning the necessary like polar structure of these words, how essential that is to them, um, because the word use doesn't necessarily reflect that. And yeah, so another thing would be like you could love and hate someone at the same time. If they were opposites, you'd think that they would have that, that maybe not a linear, relationship, but that's a complex psychological thing. But you can love and hate someone at the same time, and you can use those words to express that simultaneously. But on the other hand, you can't, love someone more and love them less at the same time, but only successively, right? So um, that that's another feature of those words that's peculiar to them. So I again another example of sort of or another reason for thinking about or thinking twice about the necessary polar structure of these things as a pole which is necessary and differs by degree, um, qualitatively, whether it's not actually a product of the categoriality of language that we've you know articulated or fused, connected them, joined them together, like salt and pepper. Salt's not the opposite of pepper, and you don't have to have pepper in order to have salt, and vice versa. So, you know, it's just we often use them together. We often talk about salt and pepper together, but that isn't. You know, what's where is that essential to them? And you know, certainly you've already said that there's no opposite to something like cup. There's no uncup or anti-cup or non-cup, right? So there's no non-salt, non-pepper, anti-pepper, right? But these are thought of as pairs, not antithetical pairs, not opposites. Um, in that case, this goes back to the beginning of the beginning of the video. In that case, I think that you know thinking about these ontological words, it's that there's no undignity. There's just the absence or presence as far as the ontological sense goes of the dignity of the human person, the nobility of the spirit. Whether or not you agree with the reality of those concepts or whatever, that's I think irrelevant. I think you'll agree. It's just just the way the words, the sense and the meaning of the words, which is constitutive of what the word is. It's just the way that they make sense or can be grasped. So, all right, thank you.